Hey kids, did you love Sonic the Hedgehog 1 for the Sega Genesis? Did you want to play it again, but worse in every way? You do? Why would you want that? No, seriously, why? Like, I know it's portable, which was a bigger flex back then than it is now, but if you bought the Switch version of this collection, you could play all of these games on the go. Hell, the Genesis games in this collection are based on the mobile phone ports of these games. So, times have changed. They were doing their best for the time, but like with all retro games, I'm no longer playing them in the time that they originally existed. Of course, I'll take that into account when criticizing the game, but I also have to judge whether or not the game is worth playing right now in 2025. I hope that makes sense. But honestly, that's more preamble than this game deserves. I keep wavering to say something good about them. In the back of my head, I'm thinking, okay, but it's not that good. And then when I want to say something bad, I'm thinking, okay, but it's not that bad. But that's the thing. Sonic 1 8-bit does its absolute best to capture the gameplay of the Genesis version, which in itself is very uneven. They do a decent job adapting Sonic's movement, but they also did a decent job adapting the frustrating level design. Thank God the Origins Game Gear ports let you use save states. Something that this game does better than Sonic 1, however, is the Chaos Emeralds. Once again, there's only 6, but instead of having to suffer through some kind of special stage, each emerald is hidden in specific stages. I used a guide for my playthrough, but I still like the inclusion. However, like the Genesis version, they don't actually do anything. All you get is a point bonus at the end of the game. It's just an extra thing to do. This game does have a special bonus stage, though. You just get a bunch of rings while you get bounced around. No reward like the Chaos Emeralds or anything special. God, there is just not a lot to say about this game. I was originally going to just give Sonic 1 and Sonic 2 for the Game Gear their own videos, but I decided to double up. I guess I should go stage by stage. Green Hill Zone is your standard fare, nothing to complain about. The boss is literally just Eggman flying overhead while you wail on him. Not sure what his plan to actually defeat Sonic was here, but moving on. Next is Bridge Zone, and the first stage here is actually pretty good. It offers some fun platforming challenges, but the second stage is an auto-scroller for some reason. Auto-scrollers are less than ideal in 2D platformers, but in a game like Sonic where speed is the goal most of the time, it just doesn't work. Now, to be fair, the Game Gear Sonic games play more like a slower-paced platformer, because the system probably wouldn't be able to handle high-speed action like the Genesis games, but that doesn't make it suck less. You can cheese the boss here by sitting in ball form in the spot where Eggman spawns. I just wanted to mention it because it was fun. Jungle Zone is pretty good. Sonic climbs up a waterfall, giving the level some more verticality, which is something that doesn't always work in other Sonic games, since his speed makes it easy to fall. But since Sonic moves slower due to the hardware, it's actually not too hard to control. The only reason you're seeing me use a lot of save states is because I'm bad at video games. Labyrinth Zone is, like in the Genesis version, terrible. I mean, it's kinda annoying. Next, Scrap Brain Zone is also similar to the Genesis version, but it's actually kind of a maze, which is neat, if annoying. It's that kind of annoying that a lot of retro games are, where they do something confusing just to pad out the length of the game. Nowadays, with walkthroughs and save states, it's a lot easier to deal with, so it doesn't really negatively affect your experience with the game, but it's also obvious what they're doing. Sometimes, though, it's annoying even with the modern amenities. The final zone, Air Base, is really difficult and annoying. The first act has this awful lightning hazard that hits you, and then instead of getting invincibility frames, you just get hit again. And die because you're out of rings, because you just got hit. The final boss is just a lamer version of the Genesis final boss. Just don't be dumb like me and keep dying at the same part over and over. The final cutscene is kind of funny, though. Eggman teleports back to Green Hill, and Sonic teleports after him and just bonks him on the head. I think my favorite part of this game is the credits, and that's not a snide comment at this game's expense. I just think the animation of Sonic singing is really cute. Also, the music is actually pretty good. I'll say it here, there's not a single Sonic game with a totally bad soundtrack. They're not all absolute bangers by any means, but the worst they can do is just alright. Okay, so the million ring question, is the game actually any good? Like I said at the beginning, it's complicated. If I was reviewing this game in 1991, I'd probably say, hell yes, this is a must-own for the Game Gear. I think the more pressing question, though, is whether or not it's worth playing in 2025. And the answer to that is no, probably not. Unless you're a psychopath like me and want to play every game in the series, I would not bother. If you are doing that, however, then it's not the worst experience you're in for. Alright, time to talk about Sonic 2. Not the cool one with Robotnik's beard on the cover, this one, for the significantly less powerful handheld console. Yeah, this game is worse in every way. I do like Sonic's sprite in this game, though. It's still very small and stubby, but it's very cute. Another thing I like is that every zone has these pictures of Sonic and Tails in that stage, usually interacting with a set piece from that stage. It's kind of weird that Tails is present for these pictures when the little story we get is that Eggman's kidnapped Tails, and Sonic is trying to save him. This game throws you right into the action with Underground Zone, which features minecarts, lava pits, and a lot of the high-speed action that Sonic is known for. The thing that brings it all down is the boss. Everything about it sucks. You're at an incline fighting this antlion thing, and you have to avoid these bombs raining down on you. But the Game Gear's tiny screen means you're zoomed way in, so you can't react to the way they're bouncing fast enough. And you can't run out of the way because going up the slope slows you down too much. And going down sends you flying into the jaws of this goofy-ass antlion robot. Eventually, Eggman comes sliding down and dies. Next up is Sky High Zone, which takes place up on a mountaintop. In order to progress, the game requires you to learn to use this awful hang glider. The game never tells you how to control it, and it's not exactly intuitive. The second act switches things up by taking place during a thunderstorm, and some of the clouds in the background are actually platforms. And you have to navigate these clouds that all look the same in order to find the Chaos Emerald in this game. Oh yeah, the Chaos Emeralds in this game work the same as Sonic 1 8-bit, just get them all for the good ending. The boss fight here is actually neat. You have to kill these robot baby birds, and once you kill them all, this mama bird appears and you have to fight it. Next is Aqua Lake, and although I like this stage aesthetically, the gameplay here is a showcase of the worst elements of this game's, and other bad Sonic games for that matter, level design. Enemies that you can't react to because they're hidden behind foreground elements. Spike pits that you get launched into, oftentimes by something else that's impossible to see coming. Thankfully, this water park type of aesthetic gets reused later on in better games. The gimmick here is that Sonic can skip across the water like a stone, which I really like. They also have a loop in this level, so yippee! The second act of this stage is primarily underwater, with you having to maneuver this bubble around. If you manage to avoid drowning, the boss is pretty decent. The stage is set up in a way that it sends you flying into him so you die instantly, but I don't even care anymore. The boss is a seal that balances bombs on his nose. If you try to just jump on him, he balances you on his nose like a ball, which is kind of funny, but it's a little unclear when you can jump on him to blow the bombs up and damage him. I got through it alright, though. Green Hills Zone, that's hills plural, is pretty good. There's some frustrating parts with springs and trying to get the Chaos Emerald, but it's not too bad considering what we've just been through. And will go through. Although this game started the trend of constantly returning to Green Hill Zone with little to no changes, there isn't even really a gimmick here. The stage's title card just has you going through a loop, which you already did in the last stage, so I don't know. The music here has the Sonic Warrior leitmotif from the Japanese Sonic CD opening. You know, the Toot Toot Sonic Warrior, Toot Toot Sonic Warrior. You know, that song? That's really good. It gets you hyped up. The boss is this weird pig bull thing that curls up into a ball. The fight mainly consists of having to predict if he'll jump over the gap in the center, roll down through it, or just shoot across in a horizontal line. But once again, it's almost impossible to react to. Jesus Christ, Sega, this is not an arcade game. You don't have to steal my quarters, and my lunch money, and my dignity. Next is Gimmick Mountain, which feels a little on the nose with every stage having explicitly stated gimmicks. But, okay. The gimmick here involves rotating wheels that Sonic can spin around on. My spirit had been thoroughly broken by this point, though, so the difficult platforming was beginning to prove too much for me. A lot of moving platforms with not enough room to see around to actually do the platforming. Moving platforms that you have to jump off of quick enough in a specific direction without seeing what that direction is. Or even that you're gonna have to jump. It's awful. The boss is this boar robot that rams into the side of the screen and stuns himself. And you have to jump on him while he's vulnerable. But when he's vulnerable, rocks fall down from the top of the screen, and of course you can't see them coming because, say it with me kids, the screen is zoomed in too far. This game might just suck, I think. Scrambled Egg Zone has the best name that isn't unintentionally a JoJo reference, and this stage hates you. The gimmick is these tubes that you get sucked through. Your only control comes when the path splits, and you need to be holding the direction of the path you want to go. But as we've come to expect by now, the screen is too zoomed in to be able to properly react. So you have to memorize the correct path while moving super fast, and all of the pipes on screen blend together, and it's just awful. God, the shrunken screen reminds me of a shitty handheld port of a console game. Hang on, guys, I'm getting a phone call. Hello? What the fuck is a Master System? Okay, cat's out of the bag. Game Gear games, Sonic 1, Sonic 2, Sonic Chaos, Sonic Blast, Sonic Spinball, and Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine were all released on the Sega Master System, which, if you're like me, you have only heard the name of. I didn't even know until writing this script that these games were both released on it and the Game Gear. For the uninitiated, the Master System was a console about on par with the NES. It sold like trash in Japan and North America, but was relatively popular in Europe and South America, and is apparently so popular in Brazil that it's still being produced to this day. So then why is it that the shitty Game Gear versions of these games are the ones that they keep porting everywhere? Why would you do that? That's like only ever porting the shitty Game Boy port of Sonic 1. It's just an objectively worse way to play the game. I understand that they wanted to put all of the Game Gear games in the Game Gear DLC for Sonic Origins, which is how I played these games, but why not also make the better versions available? The Genesis versions of Spinball and Mean Bean Machine aren't here either. It's just the Game Gear versions. I just don't understand. When I eventually do videos on Spinball and Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine, it'll be the Genesis versions, since I had the foresight to play those ones. But for Sonic Chaos and Sonic Blast, I played the Game Gear versions included in Sonic Origins. So, unfortunately, I didn't play the best versions of each of these games, which was my intention with this Sonic series. But oh well, at the end of the day, I don't think the experience would be changed very much by having played the Master System versions. I think my opinions would still be relatively the same, but I couldn't just not mention it, you know? Back to the game, and yeah, this stage is torture. I hate these old games that don't just want to challenge you, but rather want you to fail. Sure, you feel accomplished at the end, but not in a way that you can look back on the experience fondly. The music kicks ass, though. The boss here is pretty interesting, too. It's Mecha Sonic, the first one. He's significant because he's the first robot clone of Sonic in the series, and although in the lore he sucks, the boss fight is fine. It's much easier than the previous fights in the game, but whatever. I'm not complaining after getting through the rest of Scrambled Egg, as well as the other brutally difficult bosses in this game. For beating this dinky little Sonic copy, we get the last Chaos Emerald. This gives us access to the final stage of the game, Crystal Egg Zone. No gimmicks here, outside of some false walls and the return of those weird spinny things from Gimmick Mountain. Overall, it's not too bad. The final boss is just stupid. You have a tube that goes in a circle around the arena. None of this would be that bad if it actually fit on the screen. You get inside the tube to avoid a screen wipe attack, and the main challenge comes from knowing when it's safe to jump out of the tube and attack Eggman. You finally defeat him, and he releases Tails, and the credits roll. Sonic and Tails are free to roam Green Hill to their heart's content. and it ends with Sonic and Tails seeing themselves in the stars. And you know I have to talk about this game's bad ending. If Sonic fails to find all of the Chaos Emeralds, he runs through the credits by himself, and at the end he looks up into the sky only to see Tails. I can't say for certain that the intention of the developers was that since Sonic didn't save him, Tails dies in this ending and Sonic is just remembering him. But it sure looks like that! It's a pretty common media trope to have a character who died look down from the heavens like this, so it had to be on purpose, right? Whatever, I'm done talking about these games. They just do not hold up well enough for me to recommend them. As funny as Tails dying is, the frustrating and unfair level design just isn't fun. So once again, the only way I can see someone playing these is if you're a deranged Sonic fan who wants to play every game in the series. You know, like me. Maybe. And that's a big, big maybe. The Master System versions are better, and even actually good. But honestly, I'm not jumping at the chance to try them out. But that's my thoughts on Sonic 1 and 2 8-bit for the Sega Game Gear. Be sure to subscribe and join me next time for Sonic the Hedgehog 2 for the Genesis, the real one. Be sure to let me know what you thought of this video and either of the games I talked about in the comments, and follow me at any of the social links in the description, including my Twitch, which is where I stream most of the games that I talk about on here. And until next time, take care of yourselves, drink lots of water, and as always, have yourselves a damn good one.